Hi there. Today we are going to solve some SQL problems which can help you crack your next big interview. So let's get started. For the problems today, we will take a hypothetical pet daycare company, PetCare. PetCare has a website, petcare.com, and we are going to help them understand how users interact with their website. The data from the website has been collected by engineers and stored in a table. This is how the sample data looks like. Let's go through each column. User ID uniquely identifies a user. Event time is when the event happened. Event name tells us the name of the event, and we have a few different events. Session ID identifies a unique session, and a user can have more than one session. So now you know how the data looks like. Let's go to the problem. The question we want to answer is, on an average, how much time a user is spending on the website in one session? In terms of events, we want to understand the length of time between opening and closing of the menu. So let's see how we can calculate that.
Before we jump into writing any SQL code, let's work through this problem on a whiteboard and figure out what strategy we're going to use to solve it. We have the input table here to the left of the screen. If we look at the data for a few users, it's pretty clear what we want to do in order to do the dwell time calculation correctly. For example, if we consider user 1, 2, 3, 4, we see that at this particular timestamp, he opened the menu. And then if we just go down and look at this particular timestamp, the user closed the menu. So if we basically look at the difference between time A and time B, we should have what we need. So I'm visualizing a table that looks something like this. Over here, if I had the user 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was able to capture the menu time open A and the menu time B in the same row, I could just subtract A minus B and get the dwell time. Of course, you note I am doing this for specific sessions. So the problem really is how do I get this table and transform it into this table? And the strategy that I'm thinking about follows the following steps. What we could do is we could subset only the rows that have menu open into a separate table like this, and only the rows that are the menu close events into a separate table like this. And then if we join these two subtables on the user ID and the session ID, we can get the table which we have up here on the top right. And once we have this table ready, we can simply run an average across the dwell time column and get the correct metric that we need. So that is the approach that we're going to try and take when we go over to SQL and write out code to do this. All right, let's head over to our SQL editor and implement the strategy that we just devised in our whiteboard session. So as you can see here, what we want to do is in the first table, we're only going to select the menu open events from our data set. In the second table over here, I am only selecting the menu close events from the data set. An eagle-eyed user would have noticed that the number of rows getting returned was slightly different, and we're just going to address this as well. Now, when we join these two data sets on the user ID and the session ID, one question that you ask yourself is, should I do an inner join or should I do a left join? And in general, a left join is a better approach to start with because it lets you figure out if there might be some funny things going on with the data that you need to address. So over here, let's start with a left join. And before we run the whole calculation, let's just see what the staging table looks like. So if I only run the first part of the code, what you're going to see is there is a small issue with our data. Two of our users in the sample data have both the open event and the close event, but one of the users only has an open event and not a close event. In this case, you probably want to exclude this user from the dwell time calculation or impute a value for the null value here. We're going to discuss strategies to address this in a later video. For now, I think we're okay to just move ahead by excluding this user. And what we can do over here is we can just convert our final join into an inner join, but we do know what the side effect of that is. We're basically dropping out users like user ID 4356 that didn't have both times available. Now, if I change it to an inner join and I rerun this query, you'll see that we dropped the rows from that user. Now we can go ahead and run our final calculation. So just as we had decided, we run an average over this dwell time column. And if we run this whole code, we see that we get the expected final output, which is 200 seconds over here. Now this is a slightly long but correct way to do this, right? Now that you have figured out what this data looks like, and maybe you want to write a slightly more optimized or a shorter query, here is how you could actually do that. Now, everything that we have done can be reduced to the simple set of statements over here. We're still joining on the user ID and session ID as we did earlier. We're making sure that we basically keep only the menu open events from the first join and only the menu close events from the second join. And instead of creating the two subtables, we basically joined the nav events table against itself while paying attention to this filtering here, and that should take care of it. Now, if we run this code, you'll see that we get the exact same output as we did in the first code. And there you have it. So we have two slightly different ways to solve the same problem. We hope you enjoyed solving the first problem with us. We will explore this data set further and solve more problems in our next video. Feel free to leave feedback and questions in the comments section below, or you can also email us at datamunchkinmailbox@gmail.com. See you next time.